I'm Malcolm Roberts, and I'm on the central coast of New South Wales with John MacRae. How long ago did we meet, mate? Come on, you got a steel trap mind. You lose nothing. Come on, how long ago? 2010?
Yes, it'll be 2010. You phoned me.
That's right.
You phoned me up and said, I forget who it was that recommended you to phone me. You made a funny statement about banks, and I said...
You belted me around the head a bit.
I did, and I explained to you that I'm no economics person or anything like that, but we go to stage shows and see magicians and tricksters, but the banks are the best. But out of thin air, they just go whooshka and create credit. They credit creators and asset strippers.
And that really resonated. John is full of colourful quotes. Let me tell you a bit about John. I first met him after one of the carbon tax rallies. You walk up to me and said, "Hey mate, we got to talk," because we already spoken on the phone. John introduced me to Pauline Hanson. You said she was incredibly honest and very competent. He has known so many people, famous people, which hopefully we'll touch on today. He is well known, aren't you, to Talkback Radio?
Yes, I've spoken on for 25 years. I've spoken on every radio program in Sydney. Alan Jones, I'm a regular on Alan Jones' show. He'll verify.
Grant Goldman, 2SM.
Grant Goldman on the Super Radio show.
All of the compares on 2GB, all of the compares on 2SM.
Brian Wilshire, every one of them.
And you've even got the better of John Laws a couple of times.
Got the better of John Laws. Funny thing, I was in hospital when just after John Laws was in hospital, I had polio. And I spoke to him, I've spoke to all of them. But when you start to get to the media people and start to hit them with the facts that you've got that they haven't seen, they want to give you the brush off because they think you're going to overshadow them, but you're not doing that. I'm trying to help the people of Australia like I was helped when I had polio and couldn't walk.
That was when you were a kid?
I was 8 and I was stricken, couldn't walk. And I had a violent alcoholic father who was bashed my mother. We had to leave home. And from that, I had trouble at school because I'd get exhausted because of polio, because of my motor neurons. And my mother, my dearest mother...
It's hard to imagine you exhausted. I've never seen you stop.
Well, that's happened because my motor neurons would be better than yours and most people, and that's a tributary to polio, which they can't work out.
Yep.
And it's a big research in America, but from that it gave me a motivation where how people helped me and were kind to me, because you wasn't allowed to go to school, you wasn't allowed to do this, you wasn't allowed to do something else. And I went to people that had older people that were kind to me, and they'd been through the Depression and the Second World War, and Australia was rehabilitating after the Second World War. We'll go into that, what great things we did, and I witnessed it. And from that, Sir William McKell was a family friend, and I used to sit and talk to him, and he was a wonderful bloke, wonderful bloke.
Highly regarded by both sides of politics.
For sure, for sure.
Australia's only Governor General and Attorney General at the same time? Is that correct?
Yeah, and he lived at Moore Park, which is just near
where you were.
We lived at Rosebery, he lived at Moore Park. My grandfather was a great friend of his, and he was a boilermaker in the railway, and he rose to the highest rank of Australia because he had empirical knowledge. See, a lot of people back in those times didn't get the opportunity of education because we went to the First World War, then we went straight into a depression. Then we started the Second World War, money-making racket, banks behind that. Like we'll
get onto that.
We'll get onto that. Like
one of the things you've got to do with John is keep him under tight control, because he knows so much. There's so much up here that it all wants to come out at once.
I get frustrated by virtue of the fact that I've met wonderful people all through my life that did things and were experienced with things and were experienced with other people, and the empirical knowledge is worth 10 tonne of textbooks. You can go into all this technical crap, but empirical knowledge is worth 10 tonne of textbooks. We can go into some of the things blokes did with empirical knowledge that helped the world from Australia, the world, not just bloody Australia, the world.
And you know, I've said to you many times, I've been, although I've got an honours engineering degree, when I graduated, instead of working in an office like most of the graduates, I decided I better go and learn something. So I worked as an underground coalface miner for about 3 years, and then I travelled and worked in American companies over in the States. One of the things I also did later on, once I realised the bean counters controlled the show and got frustrated with some of the senior managers of companies, one of the things I did was went and did an MBA at the University of Chicago, which is one of the, if not the top finance school in the world. And it's had more Nobel prize winners in economics and finance than any other university. And they didn't tell me how money is created. I'm not talking about making a profit or earning an income. I'm talking about how money is created. This man told me how money is created. And just recently, there is... Grab that book, mate. That's the one Anthony Sutton.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. This book, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, written by Anthony Sutton, who had a number of people coming in to him over the years. And Anthony Sutton was a fellow at the Hoover Institute,
yes,
at Stanford University. Very, very well respected. He had a number of people coming to him over many years saying, what about this and what about that topic? He said, oh, go away, it's all rubbish, it's all conspiracy theory stuff. Someone brought him some strong evidence, and to his credit, Anthony Sutton started looking into it. He has done phenomenal research. He's dead now, but he's done phenomenal research. All his books are very, very well footnoted and referenced. This is one of the books, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler. Another one is Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, which I also bought and read. And another one is Wall Street and FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which I bought and read. Anthony Sutton has done a mile of work. But the point is, I went to one of the best universities in the world. They didn't tell me, and strong in finance and economics, they didn't tell me the basics that this man told me from his reading and his empirical knowledge. So, John, you told us about your polio, which caused you to be ostracised. Yeah. That got you going at around about 15 years of age.
When I left.
And how old are you now?
I'm 77.
So he's been on this topic for 62 years, and he has a.
Well, McKell was the first bloke to tell me about our Tax Act.
How old were you when you met McKell?
Oh, he used to come to our place when we had racing stables, and he would come to our place when he was Member of Parliament in New South Wales. I was only a little boy.
So you were just a kid?
I was just a kid.
And he and you would sit down and talk?
No, not then. I'd sit down more after I left school.
Right.
And I'd meet him and talk to him then. But he was... Well, I was going to school and I met him because it was just then we had to leave home because of my father bashed my mother, and I forget how we come to meet one another that time, but he used to told me about the Tax Act of 1953.
Yeah, you've told me about that. That's where I learned about that, and that's destroying our country.
Where if you're manufacturing or conducting business or invest, you need not pay tax if it's a tax in the country of origin. Now have a look how the Cayman Islands.
Hang on, let's just slow down. People can't keep up with you, mate, okay? Because you go through so many things. That's the 1953
Tax Act.
Dual, what is it?
Reciprocal Tax Act.
That's right.
Which
in that act, prior to that act, in 1953, every year, foreign companies used to come to the Treasury to get an exemption from paying company tax. Treasury got sick of this, apparently, and went to the Prime Minister at the time, Robert Menzies, and said...
Sir Arthur Fadden.
Sir Arthur Fadden, was it? So he said... and they legislated so that foreign companies don't have to pay company tax in our country. That is still the case. And Pauline has been beating that drum for a long, long while. We have to tax multinationals.
But
you're the guy.
Us and John Cummings from up that wrote the book how to screw, anyway. Yep. What happened, that was at the time when we were building the Snowy Mountain scheme, and we had the Holden motor car. We owned a Holden motor car.
Yep.
£1 million from the Commonwealth Bank, £500,000 from the Bank of Adelaide, and £500,000 from the Bank of New South Wales. The first 3 Holden motor cars, people don't know, were made in America. Come out on a ship called the Wanganella.
Designed in Australia but made over there.
Yeah. And GMH...
the ship Wanganella.
The Wanganella. I'll tell you how I know all about that in a minute. And under a cloak of secrecy, it was berthed and driven at Walsh Bay, and the cars were taken to Melbourne. GMH, the General Motors people, didn't want anything to do with those Holden cars because it's a socialist country, they said. We don't want anything to do with it. But it was because of our Lend-Lease war thing and how they were assembling all GMH stuff in South Australia that they tended to go towards them to do the job, because Ford was only wasn't as big. And they said it'll never work, got no chassis, got no this, a unitary construction, stupid thing, Australian invention, set the world.
Unibody construction is Australian?
Yes, they set that up.
That's the first one we'll talk about.
No, we've got better ones than that. We've got better ones than that. And the motor was modelled on a old Chev motor, a grey motor, and by the way, that was a forerunner for Jack Brabham's motor, the GM.
We'll get on to Jack.
We'll get on to Jack in a minute. Now, they didn't want him to do it. There was about 80 odd. There's a book written about it from somewhere, I've been told. There was 80 engineers came out, and all the boats and spare parts. Anyway, the way they go, they didn't want anything to do with it. So Menzies, in his stupid belief, by the way, he resigned his post when the war come on, so as he didn't have to be called up. So it'll just get that's well documented. Now, after they sold 20 odd thousand, the Yanks said, these blokes have come onto something. They've done something.
Like so many Australian inventions, they're onto something. Right?
They're onto something. So they wanted control of it. So Menzies wouldn't put any more money in it, so they did, and they got control of General Motors Holden. We never got a zack out of it after that. After we financed it all. It's just pathetic.
And that's not the only one.
That's not the only one. Like, our
government has let us down so many times, especially after Second World War.
Well, see, what in 1953, the General Motors, we had the car. We were into the Korean War.
Yep.
After the war, in the late 40s and early 50s, I think it went up to about 53, 54. There was power rationing in Sydney. Not because we couldn't. I can tell you all the power stations we had because my father was in charge of one at Bunurong. The world wanted everything from Australia, and we were the only ones that could supply everything. Everything. I mean everything. Minerals and food and machinery and everything else.
All of Europe was bombed out, smashed.
Bombed and buggered, and they needed to be real. So it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter if the fence post was put up to be the Prime Minister. The place, the place would have gone on and on.
Yep.
We were getting a pound for wool. For wool. They had meat rationing and dairy food rationing because the rest of the world needed it, and we were exporting it. The place was on. I think we only had about 8 million people in the country then. At that same time, we're building the Snowy Mountain scheme, the greatest achievement in the world. Hey, by the way, people don't know, it's the hardest concrete in the world.
And invented in Australia.
And Sir William Hudson assembled all these.
You also met Sir William Hudson.
I had plenty of conversations with him through another friend of mine that arranged. Genius. He built 2 other dams in Sydney before that, the Avon and the Warrenora dam. And he assembled all these people. And the Yanks came out here. I'll tell you something how good Australians are. The Yanks come out and say, we'll do this, we built the Hoover Dam, we did this, we did that, we'll do the records, we'll do this, we'll do that. There was 2 blokes from Queensland come down, 2 knockabout blokes. Teese brothers.
Yeah.
They broke the mining records. The Yanks couldn't believe it. Where did these yo-yos come from?
And I don't think they had much experience tunnelling.
But they put it all together, like they've done with other things. It's no different to O'Connor, 1896 or something back then.
Oh, the builder of the Kalgoorlie pipeline?
Perth to Kalgoorlie, that started our mineral wealth off in this country. O'Connor. Did they teach it in schools? No. Did they teach that in schools? No. They don't teach it. They don't want to tell you about all the great things we've done. And that took about a year's budget to do it. Now, you think back, no technology, no machinery, steam driven, horse and carts, steel, how they did it is wonders of the world, really.
And the pipeline's what, 7 feet in diameter?
I don't know how big it is. It's bloody big. I reckon you could drive a car through it, and it had to go over mountains. So he built steam-driven boilers with pumps to pump it, and they criticised it because the water didn't come through at the volume.
So when they turned the tap on, it didn't come through immediately.
No, he committed suicide over it because of the ridicule.
But then it worked.
It's still there today.
Working.
And how's Kalgoorlie and Kilgardy and Western Australia booming from that? It's unbelievable, isn't it? Can anyone in this world...
And how long is that pipeline? About 500 miles?
Oh, gee, I
think it's about an hour flight from... I've done it a few times, from Perth to Cal.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. That a man could come up with that. It's no different to Sir William MacRae. 1841.
So you can see John's passion. He just gets so excited when he's talking about Australia's achievements, and he gets so frustrated when he can see what's getting in the way.
He built the harvester, horse-drawn harvester. No machine.
That one they did teach us in school.
Did they?
I bet you they're not teaching it today, though.
No, I'll tell you what they don't teach you. I'll tell you what they don't teach you. This is what they don't teach you. The Law Book of Australia, the Constitution. And half of these things I'm talking about...
Hang on, the Constitution's only this thick. That's Ogden, is it?
No, that's
annotated, sorry.
That's annotated. That's they use it everywhere. It's quick and Karen. Quick and Garen.
Yep.
They use it everywhere. They don't teach about that. Now, they did all that. Frank Sinatra wrote that song, I Did It My Way. That's applicable to Australia, what we've done here. 1841, he invents the sweet strip. Same year, man from England, a surveyor, geologist and a minister, Sir William Braithwaite Clark, found all the coal from Victoria and brought up the North Coast, the gold out west at Sofala, Baths, everywhere else.
They found that back then.
Back then. They knew it then. Even Captain Cook knew it, because the Black Fire, the Aborigines used to call it the Black Rock. The Black Rock, they burnt it.
You can't talk about coal anymore. You're not allowed to talk about coal. Well, you can export it and get royalties off it and make steel out of it, but you can't talk about it.
Oh.
No, that's
sorry. Is that right?
Sorry, mate, yeah.
Well, it's a funny thing that
the country,
the past plus the present, Malcolm, formulates the future. And our wealth has been based on coal, iron ore, bauxite, everything else.
That's right.
So don't start being a hypocrite, and that, because if the Greens are so adamant about it's no good, and they use cars, phones, clothes, computers, houses,
public transport, bicycles.
You would, Malcolm, unless
clothes.
You know, it's all got to come out of the ground.
Yep.
Nothing.
Either grown or dug, or some of it's not correct. Some of it's fished.
Well, you've got to get out the ground. To get out of the ground, you've got to use machinery. You've got to make the machinery. You've got to get the steel. You've got to get. So
that means coal.
It needs heat. Where do we get the heat? We can't bring it down from the sun, because they've got the bloke up there's got a covenant on that. You know, so we've got to use coal, and we've done it. All the prosperity that we've enjoyed since the war, before the war, but since the war, has been predicated on dams and coal,
water and energy.
And look what we've all those greens, and all the protagonists that say it's no good, their parents and their grandparents and them, they've all enjoyed that success.
Correct. And they're still enjoying it.
And they're still enjoying it. See, when they start telling you about CO2, look, we're just here near the ocean, just here. It's a
beautiful view. We might show it to you later.
So 75% of the world is ocean, and there's more CO2 there than anywhere. But how did it get there? But what they don't tell you is what a volcano exudes is worse than anything what we can do on Earth. And there's all the volcanoes in there, but that's just a byproduct.
Most of the volcanoes are underneath the sea.
Yeah, but that's only what we've got to get back to is what Australia had, what we started. We've had a deviation. I apologise, ladies and gentlemen.
You don't have to apologise. Keep going.
Because I've been doing this for so long and it frustrates me.
So you also met. Tell us how you met Victor Chang, the famous heart surgeon.
Look, I started off as a mechanic, and
hang on. Before we meet Victor Chang, tell us all the things you've done, the occupations. What did you do when you left school?
I went in the meat game and I got dudded with a bloke, so I transferred me.
So you're a butcher?
I started off in the butchering game, then I went into mechanics. Mm-hmm. And then I did a welding course, you know, pressure welding course and everything like that, and a spray painting course, and I became a shift engineer in the coal mines. I worked in a coal mine that was only 4 foot from the floor to the ceiling.
Even I'd have to bend over in that one.
We all had to bend over. and we then went...
so that was in Burragang Valley.
Clutha? And Clutha Developments, and a fellow from America owned it, a fellow called Daniel Ludwig.
Yeah, very wealthy.
Who boasted he doesn't pay tax here. Our mine... They claimed he paid about 40 million for the whole place.
They were highly productive mines.
We had the best in the world, the best coal in the world. We have the best and cleanest coal in the world that can be burnt, 98% clean. and they don't tell you that. Japan and Germany and everywhere else they're doing it, but they don't want to do it here because.
So you were a shift engineer. So you became a mechanic, and then very quickly rose through the ranks to become shift engineer at the underground coal mines at Clutha.
Yeah, I nearly got killed there. I got trapped under a 15-ton machine and got my cervical spine broken and my arm nearly torn off. But that, through having polio, it gave me the determination to overcome these things. And it's the same that's given me the determination to look into what has happened here. And
so after the shift engineer?
Then I started my own business. I started a poultry business where I had a property, and I dressed.
So you're raising chickens,
ducks and drakes, and that's what the government plays. They play ducks and drakes with it.
All right. So then, after how long did that go?
Oh, about 8 or 10 years, I suppose.
8 or 10 years. Then what did you do?
Then I started a transport business, and I transported the best racehorses, Melbourne Cup winners and everything else.
But your mother was a very good horse.
My mother was champion lady rider of Sydney Royal. I could show you a photo of her riding in the first team.
Yes, show me the photo of it.
It was the first team of greys. They had a special event in '52 at the Royal where only grey horses could compete. Same as they have a big race meeting with only greys in it. And she was in the team of greys that won the first team. It was on the front page of Sydney Morning. At the time, I thought that my mother's got to win that. She that same day she rode in the ladies' trotting race in saddle at the show. How many children?
She's a very beautiful woman, and especially beautiful heart.
Unbelievable woman. She's why I am here today, because when I had polio, they didn't know what to do, and the 4 doctors in Australia, Hoots, Hudson, Hertz, and someone else, it's the Norman Royal. They said we can experiment. I can show them the operation if they want to. And if not, he'll be in calipers and most probably his foot will contract, and she said, he'll get over it, he'll win it. And they said, well, you've got no medical qualifications, what do you base that on? She said, he was that strong when I was pregnant with him, and he's that strong now, and he got up and walked around a playpen at 6 months, and my father said nothing will be too hot or too heavy for him to handle, and he's got the determination of 17 lions. I've got confidence he'll get over it. And I did. And it was through her guidance and love and affection that both my brother and sister, we've been very fortunate. We're a product of our environment. None of us drink or smoke or gamble. And I've been mixed up with horses all my life. So I've
and you've met a few crooks in the industry.
I've met a few
in the horse racing industry.
Everywhere. There are crooks everywhere. The best crooks are in Parliament.
I'm not going to argue with you. They're the cleverest.
They're the cleverest because they get paid to rob you and shaft the country and then get a pension for it.
And it's not a laughing matter.
It's not a laughing matter. And like when you consider, this is what you've got to consider, ladies and gentlemen. If you just work on the till in the supermarket, are you entitled to get more money than the manager of the supermarket? There's a Prime Minister. He's getting less money than public servants. They're public servants of the people, not dictators to the people. And they're instructing the politicians and ministers because they don't know what they're doing.
But hang on, mate. It's not just the public servants who are public servants. Every member of Parliament in every Parliament is a servant to the public. They serve the people.
Supposed to. And they're supposed to come and tell us, like, we'll go through some of these treaties that we've signed, which are...
grab them now. Grab them now.
Look.
Hang on, we'll take this off.
Take that off. I've got to tell you about that.
Okay.
There's some of them. That's only some of them.
These are treaties that we've signed?
Treaties and agreement. Look, Australia multilateral...
So these are multilateral, so many signatories. Bilateral, so
some of the indexes.
These are 2 signatories.
There's one of the GATS. I haven't got all the GATS. I haven't got the MRI here. So there's in excess of 5,000 here. So
that's in excess of 5,000 treaties
and agreements. Treaties and agreements.
When did you get those copies, and where did you get them from?
I got that from. There's the bloke that gave them to me from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. That's his name. Then I don't suppose we should.
No, you probably better not tell. But what year?
I would have got them right back.
That was as at December 31st, 1998.
Yeah, but that's the. I had another one before that, a big book, like it was about that thick and about that big. It had everything in it, and I got robbed and they stole it. So I got the first edition I got was right back in the 80s, in the late 80s.
So you got that directly from the Department of Foreign Affairs?
Foreign Affairs and Trade. I got that from there. The GATS There's the GATS, the Multilateral Agreement on Investment. That's the General Agreement on Trade in Services, the General Agreement on Trade in Services and Investment, the Multilateral Agreement on Investment. All that is built on. I'll show you what it's built on. Then we signed this thing, Agenda 21.
Hey, John. You know how Pauline's been the only politician that's talked about
I'll
that
tell
for
you
20 years?
The only bloke that wants to talk to you on radio about this is Graham Goulburn.
Yeah.
He's the only one.
Yep. So, and I've talked about it ever since I found out about it, which was a few years before I met you. But you've taught me a lot more about it. But Agenda 21, you'll be pleased to hear this. You might know it, but it's now in the mainstream media. Peter Credlin raised it a couple of weeks ago.
Hey, you've never seen that one?
Oh no, you showed it to me.
What's it say up here?
Not for circulation.
And where's it written by? Maurice Strong.
Agenda 21, not for circulation. Written
that
by
come
Maurice,
from America.
Written by Maurice Strong, you say, okay?
Yeah,
Maurice Strong is the grandfather who invented, the grandfather of global warming claims. He invented it, fabricated it. Keep going. It's all part of Agenda 21.
So it's all part of Agenda 21.
Hang on, let's tell people what Agenda 21 stands for.
That Agenda 21, remove all your rights of
No, just overall, we can get into the detail in a minute. It stands for the 21st Century Global Governance. And when people started understanding about Agenda 21 in recent years, they changed the name to Agenda 2030. They want this rubbish to destroy our sovereignty, to have an unelected socialist global governance in place by 2030. And guess what? Did you realise what Donald Trump said at the United Nations a couple of days ago?
No, I didn't hear it.
He said he is opposed to what the UN is doing to have an unelected, unaccountable global governance. He said that. And he also said something else. He said that he would always protect the sovereignty and the patriotism of the United States. He said that. Do you know what was reported?
Nothing.
No. He also made a comment saying that he'd done more in 2 years than any other president. And they laughed at that. That's what the ABC reported, that he was ridiculed. He didn't miss a beat. He just went, oh, that didn't get the right reaction, but that's okay, keep going. But that's what he raised, global governance. He put it out in the open.
Yeah, but they've built on that. They've built on that.
Mate?
They've built on that. And now we've got the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Australia signed, all the rest of the countries bailed out. He wants to bail out of the Paris Agreement. He knows that.
No, not all the other countries bailed out. Some of them still signed it.
Yeah, what the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I think there's about 5.
Yeah, well, America pulled out.
America pulled out. The big countries, but us stayed in it. You know, the same as what we did with the Lima Declaration. The people don't know about. Now, when you can't get a job...
So tell us what George W. Bush, George H. Bush, the senior, said in 1992.
No, 1991, 9th of the 11th, 1990.
Okay, and that, the Rio de Janeiro Declaration for, I think it was development and environment, was signed by Paul Keating's representative in 1992.
Yep.
And this is what George Bush referred to, George Bush Senior. That was Agenda 21, and it comprises biodiversity restrictions, which are to take property rights, which we can get onto later. It comprises sustainability clauses. I mean, they wrap all this crap up in lovely terms, like who can argue with sustainability? Yeah. The only problem is UN sustainability is built with subsidies. It's not sustainable. And the third one they wanted to push the global governance.
They want another 400 million of us.
Yeah, the push global governance is climate change. That's what they claim. So that's how it's orchestrated. You've seen the documents. And what did George H. Bush say?
Which one?
Senior, George H. Bush.
On the 9th, 11th, 1990. Off the top of my head, I've got the quote here. I can
just rattle off. You're pretty good at this.
Out of these extraordinary troubled times, we have the opportunity to forge towards a new world order.
A new world order.
Yeah, a new world freer from the threat of wars. Malcolm, I should read the whole thing out to people. I've got to find it. I should read the famous thing. Quote George Bush Lima Declaration.
That'll be fine. Grab the Lima Declaration one, mate.
No, we've got to tell them about. We've got to tell them about George Bush. We've got to tell them about George Bush.
He's got so much stuff in his head and so much stuff. If you can't find it quickly, let's move on.
It's here. Yeah, I told you I'd find it.
You better be careful or you'll be falling off the back, mate. Move your chair forward. because I don't want to move it forward again.
Here. Towards a new world order, harnessing the economic, food and Middle East crisis. We stand at a unique, extraordinary moment. This crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers us a rare opportunity to move towards an historic period of cooperation. A historic period of cooperation. Cop the word. Now you've got to start working out with the word cooperation. Who are they going to cooperate with? Out of these troubled times, our objective is a new world order can emerge. A new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice and more secure in the quest of peace. An era in which nations of the world, East, West, North and South, can prosper in harmony. United Nations agenda. 100 generations have searched this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars rage across the span of human endeavour. Today, that new world order is struggling to be born. Now, you don't...
John, something you have said many times. Australia is the only country in the world that can stand on its own.
We're the only country... This is... Hey, I'll give you a little bit of a go on that.
I'm sure you will.
We're the most self-sufficient country in the world. No one has got it. We're not constrained by the northern hemisphere weather problems, snow and wind and rain.
And latitude puts us from the tropics through to temperate.
Everywhere. We've got 75 of the 77 minerals the world requires in abundance. We're awash with oil, coal and gas, bauxite, steel, iron ore, aluminium. The only things we're a bit short of is chromium and titanium. But I don't think
we can get titanium from mineral sands.
Eh?
We can get titanium from mineral sands, but we're not allowed to mine it anymore.
Well, how did we fix up the when they want to fix up the bullets with just up here at Kingscliff? They got that the Foister family found that stuff that hardens the bullets and everything. So we've got that. But the most important thing that we've got more. There's more brown coal off Botany Bay than the world can use at the end of time. The purest diesel oil in the world come from Gippsland in Victoria, the brown coal. We've got more.
You hear that? Diesel, pure diesel from brown coal in Victoria. The Japanese said that, didn't they?
The Japanese got that, and they just give everything to them. They think, oh, that's all right. We can do a bit of a trade deal. What we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, we used to own the table, like the table, be the Australian land. We're living off the crumbs of a rich man's table, where once we made the bread and owned the table. Successive governments have eroded it. Now, get back to the richest country in the world. We've got all the minerals, all the oil. We're totally self-sufficient in every aspect of that. There's no...
And in the north, we've got lots of water.
We've got 4 times Sydney Harbour goes out over the Victoria Falls every 48 hours when it's on. And it still goes out there.
Where's the Victoria Falls?
Up the Gulf, up the north of Australia. But what we are the best at, we're the greatest farmers in the world, the greatest. No one can produce rural produce like we can 365 days of the year. No matter what you want, we could do it here.
And yet we're importing some of our finest produce from California.
And it's all...
Why? Because they've turned desert into rich agricultural production. And California, not just because of agriculture, but California itself as a nation would be the 6th largest economy in the world because they harnessed the rivers and turned it into prime agricultural land.
Well, we've got the best in the world. We've got it here. We've got the best farmers. I'll tell you what we've done.
We certainly have.
The Ord River, another achievement through the Commonwealth Bank. That's what I've got to tell you about.
Oh yeah, tell us about the Commonwealth Bank.
I'll tell you about the minerals first, the farming, and then we'll go into that. No one can produce the varieties of wheat, potatoes, vegetables, rice.
Lockyer Valley, Darling Downs,
everywhere,
Murray, Darling
everywhere. People should go down the Murray, the Snowy Mountains and see what that's done. The Ord River see what it's done. We get record crop. We're not a dry country. The rain falls in the wrong spot. We've got to divert. The same as what they've done in the Snowy Mountains. You've been in Parliament, Malcolm. Ask some of these geniuses down there that think like the knowledge you can write on the back of a stamp. Tell the only bloke that would know would be the bloke up there.
How do you know she's not a she?
Well,
you don't know. Come on, that's one thing you don't know.
We don't know. There could be a bit of gender bias. You know?
Yeah, keep going.
So what happens? Could someone calculate to me how much money how much security, how much future, how much opportunity the Snowy Mountains generate over there. Of course, no one will be able to.
Yep. And you know, there's something else in that mix. Or you're in breath. Keep going.
So what happens? We've done all that. That's our great. There's nothing we can't do. Look, I'll tell you how good it is. Europe has got all the flash cars: Lamborghini, Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, Lancia, Porsche, everything. Where did they get their reputation from? Grand Prix racing. Fango, Castelletti, Eugene, Prince Bira, Fangio, every one of them. Little Australian went over there once. His name was Jack Brabham. Learned his trade on the speedway in a home-built engine. I've got photos of that midget, me sitting in the midget. Repco, engineering company in Australia, built the engine. Only person...
Home designed, home built.
Ozzy Tyre and Ronnie Tornack were his mates. Ronnie Ward was his mate. I met all those blokes. I used to knock around them at the speedway and road racing. They were genius, and most unpretentious people you'd ever meet in your life. Geniuses. Won the world. Racing drivers, and the manufacturer in a car he built, designed, and was a mechanic. No one's ever done it.
3 times.
3 times. But he only...
And he's the only person who's ever designed,
only in the world. And the record will never be equal.
And driven.
Never be equal.
And he did it 3 times.
Where do we get it from? Australian ingenuity, empirical knowledge. Like I'm trying to tell you what we did with the O'Connor and the Snowy Mountain Scoot. Now, what you don't know, what the people don't know, Malcolm, the Commonwealth Bank built the... By the way, we had the longest railway line in the world. That's the Transcontinental Railway. Only took 7 years to build, or 8 years to build.
And when was it built?
In the 1800s to 1903 or something.
You hear that? When Australia had a tiny population. What was their population in 1930?
I think about 6 or 7 million.
Yeah, and 1920s was about 5 million.
5 million, and our basic wage.
All of our, lot of our infrastructure and major achievements came when we only had a population of 5 million.
No money,
this massive continent.
It's the longest, straightest railway line in the world. They did that. That joined Western Australia to the east coast, and all our minerals and everything else. That was financed by the Commonwealth Bank, Reserve Bank. Our Commonwealth Bank was our bank. They started by Andrew Fisher and King O'Malley and Denison Miller.
And Denison Miller was the first governor of the Commonwealth Bank. Yeah. And the Commonwealth Bank then was a public bank. It was also
owned by the government.
It acted as the Central Bank, Reserve Bank powers.
They lost that in the 60s, and that financed the Transcontinental Railway, our First World War effort. And
we emerged out of the First World War with no debt.
We paid a lot of England's debt, and we lost 60-odd thousand. Was wonderful.
Out of proportion.
Shocking. And what has war proven? Nothing. Only thing it has proved, I tell you what it's improved emphatically, that's a money making racket.
Yep. And we emerged out of that with minimal damage, relatively, certainly not in human life, but in terms of material and debt, because of the Commonwealth Bank, and then, a publicly owned bank.
Yeah. They financed that, the Transcontinental. Then through Sir William McKell, we got the snow. He was the leading light to get the Snowy Mountain scheme, because it was all in New South Wales, and he had to get the South Australian and Victorian governments to come on board. The Commonwealth Bank financed that. Hey, ladies, you know what they financed it under? I'll tell you what the interest rate. You'll die when you put the massive interest rate. 5/8 of 1%.
So just over 0.5%.
And that's when Menzies, when the Yanks came out here, and they didn't like paying tax, and that's when he brought in and so did the English mob, that no one wanted to pay tax here, and they were earning money out of it, and it was like a revolving door, and it created that much prosperity and work. Everyone was in work.
So John, you introduced me to something with Jim Killaley. Deputy Commissioner of Taxation in charge of international matters and large companies.
Yeah.
And he said since 1953...
No, he said this on the 28th of October 1996.
And in 2010. But what his words were... Yeah.
Multinationals have paid little tax or no tax since 1953.
And he said 90% of Australia's large companies are foreign-owned. And in Japan, the figure is 2.5%.
I got all those figures here.
That's all right. I remember these figures. In America and Britain, it's around about 12.5%. Yep. So we have got 90% of our large companies foreign-owned. The figures, John, you can't get them these days.
No,
the government no longer releases the figures on foreign ownership. No. But here's what I wanted to get to as well. we talked about how this country could stand alone, how it has stood alone, how it survived the World War I despite a huge imposition on our small population in terms of the death toll of our young men and women. Now, it survived, all of that was independent. Now we, the United Nations, George H. Bush Sr., they're now making us interdependent. And that's a wonderful thing they point out, interdependent. What interdependent means is that we are no longer independent. That means we are dependent. So this country, blessed with resources, blessed with water, blessed with agriculture, blessed with ingenious people and entrepreneurial people, leaders in the world in so many fields are now dependent on the world. TPP, unelected socialist global governance coming into place, controlling us through biodiversity and through sustainability. That's crap.
See, that's what we did with we built the Snowy Mountain Scheme. Now, people don't know it, but Australia is a world leader in highway and concrete engineering. The Opera House could never have been built unless we had all these derivatives of information from the Snowy Mountain Scheme. What they did down there, they made their own sand. Now that sounds funny, don't it? They made their own sand. This is what they don't teach them in school. Made their own sand. They ground up their sandstone at different granulation size, different.
So that's how they did it.
My brain's going. and mixed it together. It was all mixed together with hot ice. That's hot ice and ice, and set. One part down there, they say it would stand an atomic bomb. The concrete's that good. Now, we had all the people from Australia, immigrants went down there and worked, and we assembled all these great engineers under the umbrella of Sir William Hudson, who was a most unpretentious, humane man that went to speak to the people. There was a strike once, and he went out there and set it all, fixed it up. Bob Menzies called him and said, "I don't want you to do that. You know, I want to take the unions on." He said, "You can do what you like." He said, "I'm good." So then Bob Menzies...
So he went and solved the problem.
He solved it like that. Click of a finger. We went out to sea, he said, you might be on strike, go back to work. It was over they had no fly screens or air conditioning. Now, it should have been there, and someone didn't do it. So we overrode everyone and went and said, now put the air conditioning, get all the fly screens, they'll be paid, go back to work, and you'll get your bonus and everything else. Menzies didn't like it. How he resolved problems. He wanted to take... So
Menzies wanted a political campaign, because he just wanted to get on, fix the job.
So then he took... By the way, the largest earthen rockfill dam is down there. They said that won't work. So I said it'll work. See, once again, like ingenuity of Australians. It'll work. He got all the composition of the rock and the soil, put it there. Largest earthen rockfill dam in the world. We've got the best hydro system in the world. He wanted to expand and go all the way up the north coast, and Bob Menzies dismantled the Snowy Mountains Authority. Unions are going to get too strong. I'm going to get beaten. See, they all use this political tool for their own egotistical gain instead of for the benefit. He's a public servant, but he's not serving the country. He's only serving himself the same as the rest. They all come out with this glossy bloody pension and everything else. So we did that. Then we did the Ord River scheme, one of the greatest schemes in the world. All the rice down the riverina. The rice they grow up there is unbelievable. Everything they grow up there is unbelievable. They've got mangoes like that.
They've got the sun, they've got the temperature.
Everything. I'll tell you what else we've done. It's just gone through. There's a bloke in Tasmania grows cherries. $1 each. All exported. $1 each.
You're not getting mixed up with watermelons, are you?
No, they're like that. They're unbelievable. I've seen them. Another... have you seen them down there?
No, I'm just showing everyone else what you're showing. They're about
the size of golf balls.
Don't tell me they're being sent to China.
They're going to sent to China. We've got down there. They grow mussels. You know, no one can grow them like it.
Not these things. Mussels.
No, mussels in the sea.
Our sea.
See, we've got the best aqua farmers in the world. We've got the best pastoralists in the world. We've got the best beef farmers in the world. We've got the best sheep farmers in the world. They've diminished them. I've got the figures.
The only thing that we haven't got is the best politicians in the world.
We've got wombats.
We've got a very good one with Pauline, but
yes, she's the only one that's
tired old parties, mate. They've been crippling us since 1944.
Well, she's the only one that ever got up and spoke about the Lima Declaration and never spoke about the Family Law Court.
Well, hang on, go on about the Lima Declaration right now. Who signed it? Who ratified it? And when?
Okay, Whitlam signs it in 75. So the Labor
Party signed it in 1975,
and then 76. It's ratified by the Liberal government. But hang on, there was three things signed in 1975 that are detrimental and perilous to this country. The Lima Declaration, it's actually not the Lima Declaration, it's the UNIDO Agreement. That's the United Nations Industry Development Organization, signed in Lima, Peru. The same place in Lima, Peru where they signed the climate crap. Now, the three things in 75 were the Lima Declaration, the world parity pricing of oil. We were totally self-sufficient with oil. They said, oh, we're going to run out of oil with the Bass Strait. That was the greatest.
They said that back then?
Yeah.
And we're telling us now we've got more oil than ever.
These are the lies that they tell you. And the Family Law Court, the slaughterhouse of the nation. The three things, the trifecta. Now, out of that Family Law Court was based on the Sexual Discrimination Act of Women of the United Nations.
Nations?
They used that word.
Who brought that in? Whitlam?
Whitlam. Sir Garfield Barwick.
So what we've seen is the deterioration in Australia under both Liberal and Labor.
Everyone, they all,
for not just a few years, for decades.
For decades after the war. So they're the three things.
A nice little two-party game going on.
Oh, it's Tweedledum and Tweedledummer.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go on about Lima.
This is a brief summation of the Lima Declaration. Now, not all countries signed it. Signed in Lima. The countries that voted against the UK, Belgium, Canada.
UK?
Yeah, they didn't have it. They don't want it. Israel, Italy, Japan. China.
Japan, did you say?
Yeah, Japan. China didn't want anything to do with it.
China and Japan didn't sign the Lima Declaration.
No, in 75. No, they've all come in since when they've found out how much they can rape this country, you see. What they want is this to be the quarry.
Well, you know, Russia refused to sign the Kyoto Protocol, and then they found out they were going to shut factories and institutions that produce carbon dioxide. You know what they found out? They were going to shut them anyway because they're outdated, right? So when they found out that they could shut them, if they get into Kyoto, they'd get $4 billion cash. So they signed the Kyoto Protocol, then shut them. Yeah. But they're just ripping the rest of the world off. Well, because of the UN agreements that are just designed to give money away.
So when people are worrying about taxes, I'll show you how much they're paying with their houses next. When they're worrying about they can't get a job, these are the couple of the things. These are the brief things. You can see the whole paragraph in there.
Is that from Lima?
This is the Lima Declaration. The UNIDO, United Nations.
That's where they mentioned New World Economic Order many times. That's where they mentioned New World Order many times. That's right. What they were doing, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they were, under the guise of helping underdeveloped countries, they would take and transfer assets and capital and management to poorer countries,
and then when they rape
that's stripping the rich countries.
Okay, I'll tell you. Correct. About it. Yeah, Australia's a signatory. That Australia transfer technical and financial resources as well as capital goods to accelerate the industrialisation of underdeveloped countries. So Japan was a basket case, and so it gets up, it gets lifted up, and they become financial. So we've got to shift to another country. These big multinational companies to get cheap labour, so they go somewhere else. India now has more millionaires than anyone else. So. I'll tell you something about it in a minute. I'll go back. Remind me about Korea. That Australia established a new international monetary system to meet the specific needs of developing countries.
Hear that? New international monetary system.
That Australia ensures that developing countries' share of the world trade increases by more than 350% by the year 2000.
So, John, when someone tries to plan an economy, they need to control the resources, but that's socialism.
It's just socialism.
And socialism has never worked anywhere in the world.
Never. And it's never been real socialism. But Abraham Lincoln, one of the greatest humane people in the world, stated, you cannot strengthen the weak by weakening the strong.
Right, and what they were trying to do, the UN, was trying to weaken the strong to strengthen the weak. All they were doing was shifting resources around so that some large beneficiaries could benefit.
So when we start to say the United Nations is not a socialist country set up...
It is a socialist.
Well, now we've got to get down to the nitty-gritty. Under the Charter of the United Nations, any United Nations...
Where is this spoken and who said it?
This is the United Nations.
Okay, so this is in the United Nations, what John is going to read out.
Under the Charter of the United Nations, any United Nations peace force would be under the command.
Any United Nations peace force would be under the command.
The Secretary General of Political and Security Council Affairs. This person.
Now, this was stated back in the 80s at the time of the Cold War, when the West and the Russians were sworn enemies. So listen to the rest of it. That's all right. We'll get them later.
We'll catch them up. So. This person is in control of all United Nations military affairs, including nuclear weapons we furnish to the United Nations. So isn't that a setup?
So the West is furnishing nuclear weapons to the United Nations, and they're going to be under the control of this particular person. And
from 46 to 49, when it was established from the League of Nations to the United Nations, none of this was ever released until the Cold War. They knocked the wall down. Arkadrev Shovlev,
USSR.
He's not Irish. USSR. 49 to 53, Konstantin Zinchenko,
USSR.
Ilyev Treshenov, USSR. Dragolev Potovich, Yugoslavia.
Part of the Russian satellites.
Antonov Drobnin, USA. It goes right through to 83 before.
Every single person here from 1946 in inception, just after the Second World War, through to the last one in 1982, at the time of this document, was either a Russian or a Russian satellite country. And they had control of the UN weapons, despite the fact that we were supposed to be at war, Cold War with the.
That was the fear. See, the best way to control people is fear or hunger. And hunger can be a lot of things, either for food or for progress or prosperity or money.
Read out that thing about the banks, please, John. We need to start wrapping up, but we must get you to read that thing out about the banks.
What did I do with it?
Is it there? There it is, mate.
Okay.
He used to be able to remember this.
I can
rattle it out.
I can rattle it out, but
so this is
out of the extract of the USA Bankers magazine of August the 25th, 1924.
1924.
That's
hang on.
That's when. See, there it is. There, the United Nations Organisation on One World Government, treaties overruling our constitution and laws.
Yeah.
See, there it is. There. But this is what happens when you can't afford a house, and what happens. This is about the banks. What I told you about their credit creators and asset strippers.
Right.
Capital must protect itself.
Slow down, because this we've got to get this through.
And then I'll show the people what they're paying.
Yep.
Young couples can't get a house.
Yep.
And we've got all the wealth in the country, and people are grovelling to get anywhere.
We've just come out of the world's greatest ever mineral resources boom, and young people can't afford houses in this country, and we're in debt.
And we've got more wealth. We've got more minerals than anyone else.
$500 billion in debt. So read out what the bankers said in 1924.
And this gets worse because even Sir Joshua Stamp.
Keep going. Yeah, I'll read out Sir Joshua Stamp.
Capital must protect itself in every possible manner by combination and legislation. Now you've got to watch the combination. Who are they going to combine with? United Nations, other countries? What legislation are they going to put in? Who's going to govern the legislation? Who's dictating the legislation? Debts must be collected. Bonds and mortgages foreclosed as rapidly as possible. When through the process.
Read this slowly. When
through the process of law. Now, who's making the laws? The United Nations, or the governments, or the banks?
It doesn't matter. The bank, whoever the bank.
The common people lose their home. They'll become more docile and more easily governed through the influence of the strong arm of government applied by the central power of wealth under the control of leading financiers. That's banks. This truth is well known amongst our principal men now engaged in forming a imperialism of capital to govern the world. By dividing the voters through the political party system, we can get them to expend their energies in fighting over questions of no real importance. Thus, by discreet action, we will secure for ourselves what has been so well planned and will be so successfully accomplished.
So I think I'll just go over that again, because capital must protect itself in every possible manner by combination and legislation. Debts must be collected, bonds and mortgages foreclosed as rapidly as possible. When, through a process of law, the common people lose their homes, they will become more docile and more easily governed through the influence of the strong arm of government, applied by the central power of wealth under the control of leading financiers. This truth is well known among our principal men now engaged in forming an imperialism of capital to govern the world. This is the Bankers magazine saying this. By dividing the voters through the political party system, we can get them to expend their energies in fighting over questions of no real importance. Thus, by discreet action, we can secure for ourselves what has been so well planned and so successfully accomplished.
What are the banks doing now?
So one day, John, we will have to go back to the source of a lot of this, which is 1694, formation of the Bank of England as a privately controlled entity, not a government-owned bank. We'll have to go through the three privately owned central banks in America, which went against the American Constitution. The Federal Reserve, the current central bank in America, is privately owned, and we'll have to understand who the people who control the Federal Reserve.
What we've got to understand out of this is why they dismantled our Commonwealth Bank that made us totally independent.
Correct.
And then
so we had a Commonwealth Bank. There was a publicly owned bank.
We set rate. See, it was a 3% for first home buyers, business, farming, and everything else. You got one bite of the cherry. You couldn't keep going back at 3%.
But that bank it was formed in 1911 by the Fisher Labor government under the fabulous leadership and governorship of Denison Miller
and King O'Malley.
And then he died suddenly and unexpectedly in 1923. And since then, there's been a gradual dismantling of that until, by both parties, both the Tidal parties, the Labor and Liberal and their predecessors in the Liberal Party, and until Keating flogged off the last of it in 1985. No, hang on, no, later than that, 1990, somewhere around there. So it no longer exists other than as a private bank, just another one of the big four. And
it was Grant Goldman on 2GB that got Lawrence Hoynes in the studio.
Show them that book, mate.
He wrote this book, How to Screw...
He wrote many books.
I haven't got the other back book, I've loaned it to a person. And he wrote another book, How to Avoid the Coming Crash, and he forecasted it. He forecasted the Commonwealth Bank, nab and grab and everything else. And when they had the Westpac inquiry and a senator from Tasmania put it up into the Senate, I can't think of his name at the moment.
McLean?
What was his name?
McLean, was it?
Yeah, McLean. A lot of the information was forwarded him by Lawrence Hoynes and everything else. But we've got to get back to the fact of how self-sufficient this country is, and the public are not told. Now, if
John, you also knew the what was his name, Chevy Moeller, who transcribed the Nuremberg trials.
He went to
Nuremberg trials after the Second World War.
He could write 200-something words a minute in 6 languages, but he was Bob Menzies' secret speechwriter, and he used to write his speeches and everything else. The same as
you knew Chev pretty well.
Terrific bloke, and he used to formulate all the court cases for people in Australia, all the leading barristers and QC, and they'd have things ring wrong words, and he'd do it, everything like that.
So you've met a lot of amazing people, and they seem to have something for you. You know,
but I'm like a ferret. I ask them. There's only one way you'll learn.
Sometimes you're like a Rottweiler, mate.
So the only way you'll learn. Hey, listen. When you were a kid, you said, "Hey, Dad, how did that work?
Yep.
Can you show me how to ride a bike?" See, this is what trouble is. They think they know. They think they're Christ on wheels, but someone ought to tell them that their tyres are flat. Yep. You know. And
mate, we're going to have to wind up.
We can't wind up. We're
going to wind up right now. But what's the last thing you want to say?
I want to
we'll come back down and have another lap.
Look, what I want to show people is from the war when we had. I'll tell you the power stations we had: Bunurong, Pyrmont, White Bay, Ultimo, and what was the other one? There was another one.
Well, you've taken me past all those where all the factories were,
yep.
And how many seafood canneries Sydney had.
Everything.
And the last seafood cannery in this country, we're surrounded by ocean. We have got the world's largest continental shelf fishing zone in the world, and we have not one cannery. The last seafood cannery in our country was sent to Thailand in 2010 from Port Lincoln. We now import 3/4 of the seafood we eat,
and it's all from polluted waters up there.
Yeah, and yet we have 36%, more than 1/3 of the world's marine parks. We are under the jurisdiction of the UN when it comes to fishing.
Yeah, because
so where do we get most of our seafood from?
Overseas.
Where in particular? Because they're shutting down our country. They're shutting down our country, John, because they say we'll fish it out. We're getting our seafood. Number one exporter for seafood into this country is China, with a tiny coastline compared to ours and a massive population. Number 2 is Thailand, with 3 times our population and a very, very small coastline.
And polluted water.
And yet they're shutting down They are shutting down because Canberra is allowing the UN to shut down our fishing zone.
No, because of these treaties. Agreements. It's like...
Okay, mate, one last thing.
People don't know, I mentioned before about our power stations and our dams.
Yep.
Now, I took you and you met one of the most wonderful men in Australia. His name Bob Wilson.
Oh man, yes.
Now he was the bond manager to build Warragamba Dam was built in the 50s and 60s. It cost the taxpayer not 1 cent. It was all done with water board bonds, underwritten by the water board, guaranteed by the government. And it was better than bank interest. So everyone wanted to be in it. They had that much money, they were embarrassed. It was traded on the stock exchange. It had that much money, it was a spillover of money that enabled them to do other projects and fix up our sewerage schemes and everything else. He wanted to put a hydroelectric scheme over the North Head and was overridden by the government. Can you imagine a 15-foot pipe going down nearly a 90-degree, the force of the water, it would generate, and it goes all the time, 24/7, because people could go to the toilet.
You know, you introduced me to Bob Wilson, and then I met Bob in Sydney, in his house in Sydney, for a few hours with John. Wonderful time. But what struck me about Bob, he'd been a public servant, he head of the Sydney Water Board, and what struck me about him was that he was a real public servant. He served the public. He was very, very competent. He understood, John, not only the water resources in this country and this state in particular, but he understood how to finance them, but more importantly, he understood how to manage the whole thing.
And assembled people.
Correct, and Greiner destroyed that.
Yeah.
And then the Labor Party after Greiner destroyed it even further. And so, by the way, thank you very much. I had 3 wonderful hours with Bob Wilson in Sydney on Tuesday evening.
Beautiful.
Wonderful at his place. He confirmed many things, because we're working on water, as you know.
Yeah. Now, and our electricity, as I told you before, and what used to happen, it used to be all smoke, and they said, oh, look at all the smoke used to come out. I'll tell you why it used to come out, because the world wanted everything. Bunurong went 24/7. A lot of those facts, I can tell you all the machinery places we had, and we
made our own tool making equipment.
Everything, lathes, shapers, drills, everything.
Nothing now.
Nothing, and the best in the world, by the way, and paper converting machines, everything. Anyway, our power station never cost us. The first 2 were built under electricity bonds out at Lithgow, Wallerawang and Mount Piper. Then all the ones at Lake Macquarie. That was from the late 40s into the 50s and 60s when we built them. And all the prosperity that this state enjoyed, and the expansion and everything else, and immigration, could not have been attained unless we had those agencies and all those
that served the public.
That served the public and did everything. We built them, we quarried our own stuff, we made our own concrete, we made everything, made our own mixers, our dairy machines, we made everything. And the world wanted everything off us. The world, and they still do. But they used to buy it once, now they just take it. Now,
mate, we're going to have to wind up there. So,
wait, well, I've got to tell them about how we find it at Glen Davis when we had...
No, we'll do that another time. We've been going 55 minutes. So we're going to have to stop.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, see, this is discrimination. and another thing they've signed a treaty is freedom of speech. And see how he's denying me freedom of speech? To tell you some of the facts that...
So I hope you can see that what we've got here is a man not only with the knowledge, he's also done the research, and he's got the energy, but above all, he's got the pride in this country. He knows that by getting back to reality, we can bring back Australia.
Hey, listen, you only got to get back to fundamentals.
Correct.
Nothing you've got, ladies and gentlemen, has got to come out of the ground for a start.
Everything.
We've got the best here, and we've got the best people. We should go into some of the inventions.
So we've got the people, the resources, the opportunities, the potential, and we have Judeo-Christian system with solid values. We need to get back to them.
To the basic. And we've got to stop...
John, can you just say goodbye? I will come back down here on a special trip and do this again with you.
I've got to say goodbye, but the United Nations is running the joint instead of us running the joint, and we've got the greatest people, as long as we get people that have got some guts, instead of saying, I tell you what we've got ministers in Parliament, but they get 75 public servants to tell them. How do they know what they're telling them?
Now, I'm going to cut this off soon, so you're going to have to just pause to make the stop clean. So just smile and say thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm.
No, I mean, thank you to them for listening.
Thank you for listening, but I'd like to take some politician on. Can you arrange for me to take a politician on? No script. No script. We just we'll start on subject, and I'll bet you I can't get one.
So there's a challenge to every politician in this country: debate John MacRae. And with that, thank you very much. And not only for today, mate, but thank you so much for what you've done for me and with me in the last 10 years.
Okay.
Thank you.